I am Jenny Joseph. I am a midwife and an activist. I fight for families. I fight for you. Perinatal means the time around birth and includes before pregnancy, during pregnancy, labor and delivery, postpartum, and any time in between. The perinatal pause provides the time to reflect on the root causes of where we are, where we've been, and to create strategies for how we can transform maternity care in America. So, Katrina, I was thinking about the dilemma that so many of our patients share about when they've had their delivery. They deliver their baby at a hospital, and they are sent home like a couple of days postpartum is typical when people go home. Yes. Even after C-section, they'll be sent home 2 days postpartum.
Correct.
And they talk about that, the first few days, everybody's running around behind them. Family show up, neighbors show up, work colleagues show up. Everybody's excited. Of course, they come rushing to see the baby, right? It's all about the baby, but at least they're showing up, right?
Yes.
And someone's bringing food, and it's all joy and love. But by that second week after they get home, crickets.
2 weeks later is nothing.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes a week later, even it's that quick. And how that impacts them is those folk who are by that time exhausted,
yes,
right? Because postpartum tiredness keeps compounding on itself, right? You can wake up after a 2-hour nap and think you're like, oh my gosh, I barely remember what it feels like to have slept for 2 straight hours.
Right.
And so the tiredness is really kicking in after that first week, and they are left just hanging.
Yes.
And these are people sometimes who've made great provision for their postpartum support. And this is what happens.
Yeah, they're by themselves. They lose sleep. They don't have the support that they had when they first had the baby.
Yeah. And some people don't have any support, period. They get home 2 days postpartum and they're literally on their own.
Back to running on their feet because they have no choice.
Yeah. A lot of our clients are in a dilemma as well in that they have to get back to work.
True. That's true.
I mean, I don't know how many times folk have asked for a work release, and we're like, well, you're only 2 weeks postpartum. Right. What are you talking about?
Right.
But, financially or, they have a need to make sure they've got revenue coming into the household, and they also are held to this because, of course, we know America does not have maternity leave.
Right.
It is not a standard. I think this is the only industrialized country that doesn't. But nonetheless, that is a massive problem. So let's talk a little bit about how birthing families can get themselves into that reality space so that they are totally prepared for what's actually going to happen after the baby gets here. What are your tips for folks so that they can start being really, ready to go and to get through this phase, because it takes some getting through.
So we just let them know that it's going to be different. Even though patients have had children before, we just let them know each baby is different, so that they want to prepare for time off of work. They want to make sure that they have the house clean and ready. They want to make sure that they have some kind of support, whereas if it's the father of the baby, if it's the grandma, just for a little bit more time than the normal couple days or week after, because the sleep issue is a big thing. The baby's up, crying, that brings in more postpartum depression.
Yes.
So we just give them tips on how they can, prepare for this. We also recommend encapsulation of the placenta for like postpartum depression, because we know it's a struggle and it's real. The lack of sleep and the baby's crying. You got to take the other children to school. So it really, takes a toll on them.
I've found over the years that just acknowledging that this is literally going to be the situation, and have people be ready for it does make a difference. It's not that we want to be negative or to be, kind of doom and gloom.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that this is truly the reality,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's a long gap between being seen after the delivery at the hospital, having the nurses or doctors take care of your medical needs, and then coming back to the postpartum visit, this ridiculous 6-week time period that has been set arbitrarily to say that's the next time you should have medical care or medical support is just so, I don't know. It's not really, it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
You know, with midwifery, for example, we are checking in on the patients throughout that time frame.
Mm-hmm.
They know they have access to us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how many times do you get calls in that postpartum period from your clients?
We get calls all the time that they have questions, concerns, or just, things that they're interested in and they don't know if it's okay to do or not to do. We also have them come in at a 72-hour mark postpartum.
Yes.
We also have them come in at a 2-week mark postpartum and then the 6-week marks. But they know they can reach out to us anytime, day or night, if they have questions or concerns.
I think, telehealth became popular because of COVID, but, midwives have always done telehealth, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the amount of phone calls 24/7 as well
right.
that you receive, but having folk know that they have access.
Yes.
I think a particular important piece is that the partners also have the same access, because there isn't really any provision in the rest of our system where the partner, the husband, has an opportunity to ask their questions.
Right.
And what we find is they're the ones that get left with trying to manage what is happening in a postpartum, especially if the recovery is not going well.
Right.
Folk who are having to be out in the workforce to maintain the household, coming home after a work day and finding that, the pregnant person the postpartum person hasn't even showered, has barely had anything to eat, has been crying the whole day. Can't get out of the bed. When these kinds of situations are happening, there's no one to tell.
Correct.
There's no one to talk to. There's no place to turn. And so many of the partners are like helpless. They don't know what to do either. They don't know how to fix. And often they are equally sleep deprived.
Correct.
They are equally feeling the depression, the stress, the strain. And so if you think about it, there are 4 million births in the United States every year. How many of those 4 million have that experience? I mean, it could be half, it could be 2/3. We don't really know because we don't count this kind of thing. We have this way of being about, well, if you die, we'll count you. Oh, sure, we got that number.
Right.
Right? But if you are actually fine, you survive, that sounds horrible, but, you make it through pregnancy and birth. Oh, well, good luck to you. Figure it out for postpartum. You're on your own. So we know that these are areas that these gaps need to be filled. There has been some recent work on bringing access to postpartum support as far as Medicaid insurance and commercial insurance. But here's my question for you and my thoughts. Who are these providers? Who is going to step into that postpartum time and provide care?
That's going to be really difficult.
Yep.
It's going to be difficult.
We don't have a system that is supportive or conducive of anything once the baby's out of you. In fact, the pregnancy episode stops as soon as the baby's born. Let's everybody, call it a day. It's a wrap.
Yep. Baby's out.
Bill the claim. Doctor, keep it moving. Nurses, get her out of the door. The whole thing stops at the birth.
Yes.
And then we're like, oh, we're just going to sort of ignore this second stage, third stage, fourth stage, the fourth trimester, some people call it, when the postpartum begins. I know we've got a growth, and I'm thrilled that the workforce has expanded to include doulas.
Yes.
Doulas are folk who are not medical, but who provide support, who provide encouragement, who provide education, who can advocate for parents and families. And many doulas do more work than just the pregnancy and labor delivery work, but they also are available to do postpartum work. So postpartum doulas are a thing.
Yeah, and that's what I was just going to touch base on. It would be great if the insurance covered postpartum doula work, because some of these patients that need the support, they can't afford it.
Yeah.
There's no providers that offer this service.
That's right.
And then we have the postpartum doula that we can offer this patient this service.
Yep.
However, they don't have the funds to pay for it.
That's right.
But the insurances don't cover it either.
Exactly.
Some of them. So we're at
most of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're
once again
up against the wall.
What
do we do with these patients if they're depressed and they can't cook a meal, or they're too tired, or they have a C-section incision? What do we do?
Exactly. Well, I know that I see, and I'm thrilled, and we're part of growing a perinatal workforce, the maternity care workforce. We have now got doulas that are, that is a body of work that's growing. We do trainings for doulas, for example. We have lactation support, which is amazing and so important. When mothers and babies are lactating, and, they are able to breastfeed their babies, give their babies human milk, the babies do better.
Yes.
Everybody does better. The families do better. And obviously the communities do better.
Yes.
So lactation support is a growing discipline. People are now trained to be able to offer that support, especially in communities and at home. We have folk who do childbirth education for postpartum and, the baby's growth and development. We have folk who are community health workers who they are watching over people in the postpartum time frame as well. And they might be the providers that do see somebody all the way out for that entire postpartum year. So we have hope. I mean, there's at least an interest in taking care of this real major problem, the lack of postpartum care. And I think those that are out there that suffer and are feeling ignored or let down, that they need to know that they have some options to reach out, even if it's not to the provider that was there for them during their pregnancy and birth, but rather that there are community providers, there are access points through doulas, childbirth educators, lactation educators, community health workers, and that they have groups, support groups, La Leche League, all of these types of things that are community-led and are out there now. It's time to find your tribe, find your people, build your network, and your network of support will support your close family, your close friends who can only do so much. And that's why we see, after that first week postpartum, so many folk are struggling. So that's a tip. Look and see what's in your community. Find your local, what we call perinatal safe spot.
Correct.
We are building out a network across the United States of what we call perinatal safe spots, where there are those kinds of providers ready and willing to service and support you. So go ahead and research what is in my neighborhood. Do it while you're pregnant so that by the time you've delivered, you know the answers, you know the phone numbers, you know the websites.
Yes.
So we really recommend people begin to think about postpartum as much as they think about labor and delivery.
Correct.
If you've made a birth plan, you might want to think about making a postpartum plan.
Yes.
You might want to start talking to your friends and colleagues. Do your research. Get ready. Because postpartum is no joke.
It's important. And it's very important. It's serious.
Yeah.
Stay connected by following us on Instagram at I am Jennie Joseph or visiting our website www.jenniejoseph.com.